The scent of hibiscus drifted through the morning air as the city of Port Harcourt stirred to life. But within the tall white walls of the Nwachukwu mansion in Old Grey, the silence was deeper than usual. Simi Nwachukwu, barefoot, sat in the back garden, her sanctuary, beneath the shadow of a mango tree. Her soft fingers traced the edge of her notepad, where half-written lyrics danced across the page. To the world, she was Simi Flame, soul singer, final-year nursing student, and darling of the river's music scene. But behind the mansion's glass walls, she was something else entirely. Something unspoken, something watched. Her eyes trailed to the balcony where he stood. Asher Chinedu Nwachukwu, her older brother. Or at least that's what everyone believed. The billionaire oil tycoon, the perfect son of Madame Anulika, the golden boy of Port Harcourt. But to Simi, he was more than that. Too much more. He knew every detail of her life, her schedule, her moods, the men who dared speak to her, especially them. She once thought it was protection. Now she wasn't sure. Her fingers tightened on the notepad. His presence haunted her stages, her classes, her dates. Every man she tried to love disappeared. Quietly, firmly. She remembered the last one. Daniel, a quiet poet. He stopped calling after one business lunch with Asher. She never asked what was said. She was afraid to. Simi rose and entered the house. The air-conditioned chill clashed with the warmth of the garden. A metaphor for her life. Beauty wrapped in control. Madame Anulika, elegant in coral lace, was arranging hibiscus flowers on the dining table. Her smile was soft but knowing. Asher says you have a performance tonight, she said calmly, not looking up. I do, Simi replied, grabbing a bottle of water. Good. You shine on stage. She paused. He worries about you, you know. Simi flinched slightly. I'm not a child. No, her mother replied. You're a flame, and flames attract all kinds of things, some good, some dangerous. He only wants to keep you burning safely. Simi didn't respond. Instead, she walked to her room, her chest heavy. As she passed the hallway, she felt it again. That shadow of him behind her. Watching, always watching. Later that night, the crowd at Eden Room Lounge roared as Simi closed her set with a song she'd written just hours earlier. Cages made of gold. Her voice, smoky and bold, carried across the room like a confession. She bowed low, her eyes sweeping the crowd, and met his. Asher sat in the VIP booth, his expression unreadable. He didn't clap. He never did. But he was always there. She turned to the bar, hoping to breathe. Your voice is medicine, said a warm voice behind her. She turned. A tall man stood there. Tayo Adebayo, her childhood friend from Rumola. He hadn't changed. His smile was the same, easy, sincere. Tayo, she gasped. They hugged, too long, too close. And just like that, the air changed. Asher appeared by her side like a silent tide. His jaw was tight, his nostrils flared. Without a word, he slipped his hand around her wrist. We're leaving, he said. I just got here, she began. Now, he said, voice low and final. Tayo looked confused. Simi's mouth fell open, but she said nothing. The weight of Asher's grip told her it was not a suggestion. They left to murmurs. In the car, silence sat between them, like a storm cloud. Finally, she turned to him. What gives you the right to do that to me? His voice was cold. He was touching you. And what if he was? Asher looked at her. His gaze burned. Because he touched what's mine. Simi recoiled, breath catching. Mine? She stared out the window, tears blurring the neon lights of Port Harcourt. And in her heart, a question took shape, one she had never dared voice aloud. What if he doesn't see me as his sister at all? The air in the Nwachukwu mansion was unnaturally still, as though the house itself held its breath. Simi sat at her vanity, her red lipstick smeared slightly at the corner of her lips. She hadn't changed out of her black performance dress. Her wrists still throbbed where Asher had gripped her. She stared at herself in the mirror, but the woman she saw didn't look like her anymore. Not the girl who once clung to his hand on her first day at school. Not the girl who sang for joy in their garden swing. No, that girl was gone. And in her place stood someone confused, angry, frightened. She stood suddenly, yanking open her wardrobe, her hands trembling. A single drawer stuck. She pulled harder, and it burst open. Inside lay a faded photograph she didn't remember placing there. A couple, young, dark-skinned, laughing in the sunlight, stood beside a small car. In the woman's arms, a child, maybe 4 years old. A girl, her breath hitched. She didn't recognize them. She took the photo to the hallway, heart pounding. The long corridor to Madame Anulika's room stretched like a trial path. She hesitated, then turned back. She wasn't ready. Downstairs, Asher stood on the balcony, shirt unbuttoned, tie loose around his neck. The dark night wind swept through his curls as he poured whiskey into a glass. The ice crackled, then melted. He didn't drink, he never did. But he needed something to do with his hands. He had lost control tonight. And she saw it. Mine. The word haunted him. She had looked at him like a stranger. And worse, like she was afraid. He rubbed his temples, his mind diving deep into a memory he rarely allowed surface. He was 10. Madame Anulika had entered his room in the middle of the night, voice thick with tears. Asher, there's been an accident. Your uncle and his wife, they didn't make it. But their daughter survived. Her name is Simi. She's coming here tomorrow. The next day he saw her. Small, quiet, holding a tattered stuffed bunny. From the moment she reached for his hand and didn't let go, something inside him shifted. He hadn't protected her because he had to. He wanted to, needed to. And over the years, the feelings had changed, grown, warped, until he didn't know where protection ended and possession began. He closed his eyes. He had tried everything to silence it, dated other women, buried himself in work. But no one sounded like her. No one looked at him with such unguarded trust. And no one made him feel more like a monster for wanting something he knew he shouldn't. Still, he told himself one thing over and over. She's your sister. Until now, even that lie was cracking. The next morning, Simi sat in the kitchen, staring into her untouched tea. Madame Anulika, regal in a pale blue wrapper, entered quietly. She looked at her daughters, tense back. You're not eating. I'm not hungry. A beat. You know, I saw your last show. You were fire. But that last song? Anulika paused. It felt like a cry. Simi finally turned, voice brittle. When were you planning to tell me? Madame Anulika's hand froze on the chair. Tell you what? That I'm not his sister. Silence dropped like a stone between them. I found a photo, Simi said, barely above a whisper. I don't know those people, Mama, but I think I'm the girl in it. Madame Anulika looked away. Her eyes shimmered. You were too young. We thought you didn't need the wait. I need the truth. You'll get it, her mother said softly, but it must come from Asher. Simi's eyes burned. He's not the only one who owes me honesty. Madame Anulika stood quietly, pain flickering in her expression. Sometimes the hardest love is the kind that hides things, just to keep you whole. But what if the hiding breaks me more? And with that, Simi stood, leaving her tea untouched, her answers still buried, and her truth clawing toward the light. The air inside Asher's office tower in Transamati was sharp with glass and steel, but even its panoramic view of the Port Harcourt skyline couldn't distract him. He sat behind his massive black desk, surrounded by untouched folders and a blinking laptop screen. The board had just left. Contracts were discussed. Billions moved hands. But he didn't hear a word of it. All he heard was her voice from the night before, trembling in memory. You don't own me. He stood suddenly and removed his suit jacket. He couldn't breathe in here. Business could wait. Nothing else mattered. He grabbed his keys and made for the elevator. 2 hours later, a black Lexus SUV pulled up in front of Cream Scoop Parlor in Rumabeque. He walked out with 2 tubs of mint chocolate chip, one with cookie crumbles, the other caramel swirled. He hadn't asked. He didn't need to. She always finished the caramel one first, even though she claimed she didn't like sweets. Then he stopped at StarTech Plaza, picked up the latest MacBook Air, rose gold, 16-inch, with custom engraved initials. Son. He didn't know what he'd say yet, but he knew he had to show up. Later that afternoon, Simi stepped out of her final lecture at Uniport, exhausted. Her classmates waved goodbye, but her mind was far. She barely noticed the black car waiting by the campus gate. Until she did. Her heart tightened. She knew that car. Everyone knew that car. She sighed. When she reached the door, she hesitated. The driver stepped out and opened it for her. Asher sat inside. She entered slowly, wordless. Her bag rested between them like a wall. For 10 minutes, neither of them spoke. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry." Simi blinked, her throat tight. The car rolled silently through town. When she glanced back, she saw the 2 tubs of ice cream and a sealed laptop box. She said nothing. But she saw the note, folded neatly, slid under the bow of the gift box. Wow. That evening, alone in her room, Simi stared at the untouched MacBook in the melting ice cream. The note trembled in her fingers. "I don't always know how to say the right things, but I mean it when I say I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. Please accept this as a small gesture, until I can find the courage to say more. Asher." It wasn't much, but the words stung because she knew him. He didn't apologize, not to staff, not to rivals, not to business partners, not even to the governor during that oil scandal. But he had apologized to her. Her fingers curled around the paper. A strange wave rose in her chest. Not just anger, not just sadness, longing. She hated it. She hated that she still felt drawn to him, even when she wanted to hate him. She sank onto her bed, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. Because deep down, beneath everything, she felt it too. The unspeakable, the wrong but right, the feeling she had spent years locking away. And now, it was screaming to be heard. Elsewhere in the mansion, Madame Anulika sat on the edge of her bed, deep in thought. Her fingers ran over a faded photograph hidden inside her Bible. A man, a woman, and a little girl with large, curious eyes. She hadn't looked at it in years. The girl didn't know yet, not fully. But it was time. She stood and walked to the hallway, her wrapper trailing behind her, like history itself. She knocked on Asher's door. He looked up from the floor, where he had been sitting in darkness, nursing a half-finished drink. "Mama?" Her voice was calm but firm. "It's time, Asher." His eyes searched hers. "She knows something is wrong," Anulika continued. "She found the photograph. She asked questions. And whether or not you're ready, she is." Asher lowered his eyes. "I can't lose her," he said. "Then tell her the truth before your silence does," she replied. That night, Simi opened her bedroom window, letting in the cool night breeze. Her hand clutched the note. Her eyes searched the stars. And in her chest, a storm was brewing. She didn't know what the truth was. But she could no longer pretend not to feel the fire behind the silence. The next day arrived slowly, carried in by a dull gray sky over Port Harcourt. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but the storm was not in the clouds. It was walking steadily down the polished hallway of the Nwachukwu mansion. Simi's heels echoed like warnings. She stopped outside his room. The weight of the handwritten note, the untouched laptop, and years of suspicion pressed into her chest. Her heart beat wildly like it was trying to hold her back. But she knocked anyway. No answer. She pushed the door open. Asher was seated at the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it held a secret he couldn't escape. His tie was gone. His sleeves were rolled up. His soul looked bare. She stepped in and shut the door behind her. "Look at me." His head rose slowly. His eyes, haunted, guilty, and afraid, met hers. "I want answers, Asher. No more silence. No more peace offerings. No more pretending. Her voice shook, but she didn't waver. You're going to tell me the truth today, or I swear I will walk out of this house and never come back. He flinched. I'm done being yanked away from people. Done with the disappearances. Done with your shadow following me like a chain. Why are you always there? Why do you control who I speak to? Why do you look at me like... She stopped. The words tasted dangerous. Asher stood slowly, like a man walking toward his own trial. I was protecting you. From what? She snapped. His voice lowered. From being hurt. From people who don't know your value. You mean people who aren't you? She countered. Tell me, Asher, what is this really about? Why did you drag me out of the lounge like a child? Why do you watch every man who talks to me like he's trespassing? He said nothing. Why does it kill you when someone touches me? She moved closer, her voice breaking. Why do you look at me like I belong to you? Asher's lips parted. A sharp breath escaped him. Because you do, he said. Simi took a step back, stunned. His eyes burned now, stripped of all restraint. I've tried to hide it, to bury it. I told myself it was just protection, just love. But I can't pretend anymore. I don't see you as my sister, Simi. Her breath caught. We're not blood. We never were. She blinked. What? You were 4 when you came here. Your parents died in the crash. My mother took you in. I knew from the beginning, but I never told you, because I didn't know how to be honest about the rest of it. He took another step toward her, as if testing the space between them. I love you, not as a brother, not as some guardian. I love you the way a man loves a woman. I have for years, and I've tried to kill it every day of my life. Silence. A scream might have been easier than what Simi felt now. This was worse. This was every unanswered question, answered all at once. She turned away, hands shaking. No, she whispered. He reached for her arm. Simi, don't. I know how it sounds. I know what it looks like. But I swear to you, I've never crossed a line. I've never touched you, never acted on it. But I couldn't stop feeling it. No matter how hard I tried. She spun around. You let me believe we were siblings. You built my life around a lie. I built it around love, he said, voice raw. Her eyes filled with tears. And now what? She whispered. You expect me to accept this? That the man who raised me, who braided my hair when I was 7, who picked me up from school, who taught me to ride a bike, has been in love with me the whole time? He stepped back. The pain in her voice wounded him deeper than her words ever could. I don't expect anything, he said, voice barely a whisper. I just couldn't lie anymore. She stood still for a long moment. Then she turned and walked out. That night, Simi sat in Ngosi's apartment in Ramola, wrapped in a blanket, her face streaked with silent tears. He told me everything, she whispered. Ngozi sat beside her, her presence calm and steady. She waited. He's not my brother. He's known all along. And he loves me. Not like a sister. Not like a friend. He said he built his whole world around protecting me. Ngozi was quiet. And the worst part, Simi's voice cracked. I think a part of me has always known. I just never had the courage to admit it. Do you love him? Ngozi asked softly. Simi wiped her eyes. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't feel wrong. It feels terrifying and true. Ngozi exhaled slowly. Then maybe the truth is what you needed all along. Rain fell softly over Port Harcourt, the city cloaked in that silvery kind of sadness only a stormy morning could bring. Inside Ngosi's modest flat in Ramola, the walls were still. Simi sat curled up on the sofa, cradling a mug of ginger tea she hadn't touched. Sleep had escaped her. Memories had not. She thought of Asher's face, broken, vulnerable, too honest, and then she thought of her own. The version of herself reflected in the mirror last night looked older, heavier, like she'd finally seen her life for what it was, an inheritance of half-truths, misdirected affection, and a love that no longer knew where it belonged. Ngozi returned from the kitchen, drying her hands. You should go to her, she said gently. Simi didn't need to ask who. She nodded. Later that afternoon, Simi stood outside Madame Enulika's sitting room, heart pounding. She hadn't come home since the confrontation. But this wasn't about Asher anymore. This was about the woman who raised her. She knocked. Come in, came the smooth, composed voice. Enulika sat by the window in a flowing green wrapper, sunlight pouring through the slats, making her look like part of the earth itself, firm, unmovable, and ancient. Simi stepped in. Her hands were shaking. I need the truth, she said. Enulika didn't turn. You already know it. I need to hear it from you. A pause, a breath. Then Enulika slowly rose and walked to the mantel. She picked up a worn black photo album and handed it to Simi. These are your parents, she said softly. Victor and Bola Oluwasun, my cousin and his wife. They died in a crash coming back from Bonny Island. You were 4. Simi turned the pages slowly, tears rising to her throat. There she was, tiny, wild-haired, clinging to her mother's neck in one picture, holding a yellow teddy in another. I don't remember them, she whispered. You were in the back seat when the accident happened. You hit your head. The doctors said you might block it out. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice was raw. We tried, but you latched onto Asher so tightly. He became your whole world. You stopped crying when he was near. You slept in his bed for a year. He braided your hair. He read to you. You called him brother before we ever taught you the word. Simi sat, holding the album like a relic. But he's not my brother. No, Enulika said. He never was. A long pause filled the space. He told me, Simi added. Enulika's eyes softened, but she didn't look surprised. I knew this day would come, she said. I just prayed it would come when you both were old enough to understand. I don't know if I do, Simi said, her voice cracking. I don't know what to feel. Enulika walked over, took her hand. I was afraid that if you knew the truth too soon, it would break something pure between you. But in protecting you from one kind of pain, we created another. Simi wiped her tears. And now, her mother said, you have to decide what part of your life was real. The love you felt, the trust you gave. It was never a lie, Simi. But the label was. Simi sat quietly, her chest full of confusion and clarity all at once. And what about how he feels? She whispered. What about how I feel? That, Enulika said gently, is no longer my story to tell. That evening, Simi returned to her room, the rose gold laptop still on her desk, unopened. But the note, she now folded it gently, as if it had transformed from an apology into a mirror. She paced, replaying memories that now carried new weight. The way Asher had looked at her first recital. The time he stayed awake all night when she had a fever. The way his arms wrapped around her too tightly, too long. Had she known? Had she always known? At the corner of her desk sat a folder marked Uniport Charity Gala. She was scheduled to perform the next night. He would be there. He always was. Only this time, she would be ready. Night had fallen over Port Harcourt, and the sky above Uniport's event hall pulsed with warm amber lights and electricity. The annual charity gala for girls in science had drawn the city's elite, oil magnates, political wives, university deans, and camera crews. Champagne sparkled, laughter echoed. But behind the curtains of the stage, Simi Oluwasunwachukwu stood still. Her hands clutched her mic like a lifeline. She wore a simple fitted black dress, no sequins, no shimmer, just grace. Her red lipstick was the only color she allowed herself. Tonight, she wasn't just Simi Flame, the crowd's darling. She was the girl who had lived inside a story someone else wrote. And tonight, she was reclaiming the pen. In the front row, Asher Chinedu Nwachukwu sat stiffly in his tailored gray suit, flanked by corporate allies and PR executives. Cameras occasionally flashed in his direction, but his eyes never moved from the stage. He hadn't seen her since she left his room. Not really. Now, as the lights dimmed, a hush fell over the room. Simi stepped out, mic in hand. "Good evening," she said, voice steady. Applause erupted. "I was going to sing something familiar tonight," she continued, "but I changed my mind." She looked up, her eyes catching his. "I wrote something new, something honest." She nodded at the pianist. A low, haunting melody filled the hall. Then Simi began to sing. "I lived in a house where the windows were clean, but no one could see through the silence between. I called it protection. I wore it like gold. But love shouldn't tighten. Love shouldn't hold. You braided my hair when the world turned away. You stood like a lighthouse at the end of my day. But somewhere beneath the names we obey, you looked at me wrong, and I let you stay. What do we call love that never was said? A flame in the hallway, a dream in a bed. If silence is safety, then tell me why. I sing you to sleep, and I still want to cry." The last note hung in the air like a confession. And then, silence. A stillness thicker than applause. Asher's hands clenched around his thighs. His jaw tightened. Around him, the crowd applauded. Slowly at first, then faster, then loud. But he couldn't hear it. All he heard was her. Backstage, Simi stepped away from the curtain, breathless. Her chest trembled, but it wasn't from nerves. It was from release. She had said what she could not say. She had let them see a sliver of the ache she carried, wrapped in melody. Ngozi appeared behind her. "You broke the air in that room," she whispered. Even he felt it. "I didn't sing it for him," Simi said, though her voice cracked when she did. Later, after the gala, the crowd dispersed into the Port Harcourt night. Glittering cars pulled away. Simi walked quietly to the rear parking lot, her heels in her hand, her makeup smudged from sweat and maybe a few tears. She didn't hear him behind her, but she felt him, Asher, his voice. She turned slowly. He stood there, not in control this time. No shadow, no smirk. Just him, open, uncertain, undone. "That song," he said, "you wrote it about me." She didn't deny it. "I had to speak," she said, "even if the words scared me." He stepped forward. "I heard every line." She nodded, eyes glistening. He came closer. "Tell me what you want me to do, Simi. I'll do it. Anything. Just don't walk away without knowing that what I feel, it's not confusion. It's not obsession. It's love. It's always been love." She looked away, then back at him. "I don't want your empire," she said. "I don't want gifts or control. I just want the truth. No hiding, no guilt, no silence." "I'll give it to you," he whispered. "Then say it plainly," she said. "Say what this is. Say what I am to you." He looked at her like she was air, like she was the answer to every wound he had stitched shut. "You're the woman I love," he said. "Not my sister, not my past. You're the home I built my life around." She swallowed, hard. "And if I walk away," she asked, "I'll still love you," he said, "but I'll never forgive myself for letting you go." The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was sacred, soft, new. She stepped back, eyes locked to his. "I need time," she said. He nodded, but she didn't turn away. Neither of them did. The morning after the gala arrived in pieces, sunlight pressing weakly through half-closed blinds, silence hanging over the Nwachukwu mansion like morning. For the first time in years, Asher awoke without checking where she was. Because Simi wasn't there. No sound of humming from the garden, no footsteps down the hallway, no teacup beside her half-read books in the lounge. Her room, when he passed it, was cold and empty. The laptop still sat untouched. He stood at her doorway for a long time, gripping the edge like it could anchor him. He had said it all. Now he had nothing left to offer but silence. Across the city, in a quiet compound in Choba, Simi curled up on Ngozi's couch, hair in a bun, phone on Do Not Disturb. For the past 24 hours, she had not opened her social media. She hadn't responded to her mother's messages. She hadn't spoken Asher's name. Instead, she stared at a blank page. Her journal lay open on her lap. Each time she tried to write, the words caught in her throat. How do you describe a love that was never supposed to exist? How do you untangle years of innocence from a desire you can no longer deny? How do you forgive someone for making you feel the one thing you were told was wrong? Ngozi brought in a plate of ewa agoyin and plantain and set it down gently. You're allowed to feel everything at once, she said. Simi smiled weakly. Even the part of me that wants to run back? Ngozi nodded. Especially that part. Simi wiped her eyes. I used to think love was soft, sweet, clean, but this love is bruised, messy. It carries years inside it. Then maybe it's real, Ngozi said, because the deepest loves aren't tidy. That night, Simi lay awake listening to the ceiling fan spin above her. Her mind drifted to that night in Asher's room, when he whispered, "You're the home I've built my life around." It terrified her, because she had always known. The way she sought his approval. The way she melted when he smiled. The jealousy that had flared when he once kissed a woman at a family fundraiser. She had blamed it on their closeness, on childish attachment, on everything but what it really was. She had loved him too. Quietly, secretly, without knowing how to name it. Meanwhile, Asher sat alone in his study, the city glittering below him, untouched ice cream melting on his desk. The rose gold laptop had been returned to him by the housekeeper. She hadn't taken it. He pressed his palms together, resting his head against them. Every room in the house echoed with her. The swing in the garden, the piano she used to play off-key, the mirror in the hallway where she would pose dramatically before galas. And now, just absence. He knew this could be the end. He had said everything. He had surrendered the truth. Now he had to wait. And Asher, the man who controlled oil pipelines and government contracts, couldn't control the only thing that mattered, her choice. The next day, Simi took a long walk through Mile 1 Market, hidden behind sunglasses and a head wrap. She breathed in the smell of roasted corn and rain-dampened dust. A child ran past her holding a hibiscus flower. She froze. Her mind pulled back to the garden swing, to a 5-year-old version of herself handing Asher a similar flower. "You're my bestest," she had said. Even then, he had looked at her like she was more than the world. She blinked back tears, then turned around. That evening, as twilight fell over the mansion in Old Gray, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway echoed off the gates. Asher remained still in his chair upstairs. He didn't move until he heard the door creak open. Footsteps, slow, familiar. His heart began to race. The sound stopped at the base of the stairs. Then a voice, soft, clear, a whisper against thunder. "Asher." He rose instantly. And at the top of the staircase, for the first time since they unraveled, their eyes met, not with shame or fear, but possibility. The marble staircase beneath Simi's feet felt unfamiliar, even though she had climbed it hundreds of times. She gripped the handrail like a lifeline. At the top, Asher stood frozen, eyes wide, lips parted, like he'd forgotten how to breathe. Simi reached the landing slowly. The silence between them was no longer tight. It was careful. Tender. "You came back," he whispered. "I had to," she said. "Not because I knew what to say, but because not coming back would have meant I was choosing fear." Asher lowered his gaze, shame flickering across his face. "I gave you so many reasons to run." "And I almost did," she admitted. "But I realized something. You told me the truth. Finally. You gave me space when I needed it. You didn't chase me, you waited. That matters." He exhaled like the air had been locked in his lungs for days. "I would have waited forever." She smiled gently. "You won't have to." They walked together to the garden, just as dusk settled. The sky was dipped in indigo, streaked with gold. The swing where so many of their childhood memories lived creaked softly in the wind. Simi sat first, her dress brushing the earth. Asher remained standing, hands in his pockets, unsure if he belonged beside her. "Sit," she said quietly. He did. They rocked in silence for a moment, the swing groaning beneath years of weight. "I went to Mama," she said. "She told me everything. My parents, the accident, how I came here." He nodded. "I saw the photos, the memories I don't have, and I realized something. My life didn't start here. But this house, this swing, this mansion, they raised me. You raised me, but you never treated me like your child." "Not really. I tried to treat you like my equal," he said. "You didn't just try, Asher. You made me your world." He turned to her, eyes full. "I didn't know how to stop. I don't think you ever really wanted to." "I didn't," he confessed. They looked at each other. Not like siblings, not like strangers, but like two people finally facing the truth, no longer masked by roles or rules. Simi leaned back, watching the stars start to emerge. "I spent my whole life being someone for everyone else. The sweet sister, the charity girl, the girl with the perfect big brother. But I never got to ask myself what I actually felt." "And now?" he asked, voice trembling. "I feel free," she said. He turned away, as though the word hurt him. "But that doesn't mean I don't feel love too," she added. He looked back at her, stunned. "I don't know what it makes me," she whispered, "or what people will say. But I know that I've never felt safer than when I was near you, and I've never felt more seen than when I sang that song, and you understood every word." Tears lined his eyes. "I wanted to give you space," he said, voice cracking. "But every second without you was like drowning." She reached out and took his hand. "You don't have to drown anymore." His fingers clutched hers. "Do you mean it?" he asked. "You're choosing this?" She nodded, her eyes locked to his. "I'm choosing us, not because it's simple, but because it's true." He let out a shaky breath and pulled her gently into his arms, the swing rocking slowly as they held each other, no longer hiding, no longer running. The garden wrapped around them like memory. The stars blinked above, witnesses to a love that defied definition, but not destiny. And in the hush of the wind, something unspoken was finally understood. This was not a mistake. This was home. 3 days after the garden, the Nwachukwu mansion was alive again. Music drifted softly from the speakers in the living room. Sunlight spilled through the windows. Staff moved with ease. Even the hibiscus flowers on the dining table seemed fuller, as though the house itself had exhaled. Simi stood at the mirror, applying soft nude lipstick. No heavy red tonight, no armor. Just herself. She adjusted her emerald green gown, the one Asher had chosen for her Uniport gala last year. Back then, she had worn it like an obligation. Tonight, she wore it like a declaration. Downstairs, Madame Anulika sat in her usual chair, a flute of zobo in hand, dressed in coral lace. Her head wrap was royal blue, tied high. She looked like a queen seated in quiet judgment, but her eyes were soft. Asher entered the room, wearing a sleek black caftan, his steps steady but his breath uneven. He had spoken to his PR team that morning. They had warned him. "The optics might be difficult to manage, sir." But Asher had smiled and said, "We're not managing optics anymore. We're just living." Now, as Simi walked into the room, every conversation paused. Every gaze shifted. She moved to Asher's side and took his hand. Not on accident. Not in secret. Anulika raised her glass slightly. "I suppose I should say something," she said. The room went still. She stood graceful as ever. "There are many kinds of love in this world," she began. "Some born of blood, some of circumstance, some so deep they defy logic. And when you find that kind, you protect it." She looked at them, both. "You have my blessing, but more than that, you have my understanding." A hush filled the space. Then one of Asher's uncles let out a deep, approving hum. "As long as she's not blood," he muttered, "na love remain. Laughter rippled. Tension broke. Later that night at a charity showcase for young musicians hosted by the Inatu Foundation, Simi took the stage again, this time not to hide, but to shine. She wore no stage name. The banner above her read, Simi Oluwason Leave. She sang of truth, of silence broken, of choosing love even when the world watched. And in the front row, Asher sat without flinching, clapping with quiet pride. After her final song, she walked off stage and into his arms. Cameras snapped. People whispered. But no one turned away. By the next week, blogs were buzzing. Are they really siblings? Billionaire heir and his adopted sister step out as couple. No blood ties? The truth behind Asher Nwachukwu and Simi Oluwason's relationship. Social media reacts. If it's love, let it be. Some were scandalized. Some were fascinated. But most were silent, watching, waiting. And slowly the world adjusted. Simi and Asher moved into a quieter wing of the mansion, started planting new hibiscus together. He joined her foundation as a silent donor. She released a debut album called Truth in the Garden. The opening track, Home is Not a House. One evening, as rain tapped gently on the glass walls, Simi sat curled against Asher's chest, the sapphire ring he'd placed on her finger catching light. He had proposed in the garden. No audience, no drama, just the swing, the sky, and a single question. Will you build the rest of your truth with me? She had said yes. Not because they had silenced the world, but because they had finally stopped silencing themselves. The morning light in old GRA was golden, soft, and patient, the kind of light that didn't rush, that warmed slowly, that asked nothing. It flowed through the open balcony doors of the Nwachukwu mansion, dancing across ivory sheets and curling around two figures still wrapped in sleep. Simi stirred first, her head rising and falling gently against Asher's chest. His arm was curled protectively around her, his hand resting lightly on her back, as if even in sleep he needed to feel her there. She blinked slowly, eyes adjusting to the sun, then smiled as her gaze fell on the sapphire ring on her finger. It wasn't just a symbol of their engagement. It was a symbol of their freedom. Not freedom from others, but from themselves. Downstairs, the house moved quietly. No footsteps rushed. No one whispered behind doors anymore. Even the staff greeted her differently now, not as a fragile girl in Asher's shadow, but as the woman who had found her voice. In the kitchen, Madame Anulika sipped her tea and flipped through the paper. When Simi walked in wearing one of Asher's oversized shirts and a silk scarf over her hair, she smiled knowingly. You look rested, she said. I feel rested, Simi replied, for the first time in a very long time. They sat together in companionable silence, the hum of the morning air between them. Then Madame Anulika reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. You've changed, she said. I had to, Simi replied, but not just for him, for me. That afternoon, Asher walked hand in hand with Simi through the garden behind the house, past the old swing where so much of their past had been sown into silence. The hibiscus flowers were blooming again, brighter than ever. You planted more, she said, running her fingers across the petals. You said the garden felt like home, he replied. I thought we'd grow more of it. They sat on the stone bench near the edge of the garden. I used to think love had to be loud, Asher said, watching the breeze tug at the trees, that I had to control it or protect it. But now I know it's something else. What is it? She asked. He turned to her. It's presence, he said. It's staying when the silence is loud. It's letting go when holding on too tightly becomes a kind of harm. Simi leaned her head on his shoulder. And sometimes, she said, it's starting again with the same person, but this time, with honesty. He kissed her temple. Do you still feel the world watching? He asked. She shook her head, slowly. No, I only feel you breathing. That night, the couple sat together by the balcony, the city lights of Port Harcourt glowing beneath them like scattered fireflies. They didn't talk about the past anymore. They had already honored it. They didn't talk about the future either. They just existed, together, in peace. Some love stories are written in fire, others in secrets. But the most powerful ones? They are written in truth, nurtured in stillness, and lived in freedom. And so in a mansion once defined by silence, two people rebuilt a home defined by voice. Not what they were told to be, but what they had chosen to become. Together. Not because they were bound by fate, but because they were brave enough to stay.